suspense. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going another episode of HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, this is the show that values time and puts God first. So let's get started. So Bleacher Report put out an article, Top 25 Most Influential Athletes Since 2000. I want to specifically focus, because I think there's a bunch of issues with the list. I think the idea of having Tiger Woods not two is insane to me when he was the reason people watched golf for over a decade. I believe the idea of Caitlin Clark, while I understand while it's prevalent now, I'm not going to give her just, talk about putting her there too early in comparisons to other great women basketball players. Not going to go there, right? Bunch of issues, don't want to focus on. I want to focus kind of specifically on the NBA one. So the top four guys, Mount Rushmore of sorts of influence, according to this Bleacher Report article. LeBron James is 1, Steph Curry is 2, Kobe Bryant is 3, and Allen Iverson is 4. Now these are the correct 4 names. The problem is they're in probably the complete opposite order. Here's the thing, Bleacher Report, and here's the thing for anybody listening. When it comes to influence is something that can't really be measured just by on-court performance, on-field performance. We have to see influence. We have to feel influence. There's probably not a person alive or that is past that has more influence on the actual players than Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson was a style. Allen Iverson was a message. Allen Iverson, he was the culture of basketball, both professionally, pickup, hanging out with your friends, however you wanted to consume basketball in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, even now. No one has had more of a direct impact on the actual players, stylistically, culturally, than Allen Iverson. He would be number 1 on my list. Then we get to 2, which is Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality. We all know the impact. There's a reason why when people shoot a basketball, both sports fans and people that are just casuals, we all shout the same thing when we shoot our paper. Kobe's impact is not just stylistically. Kobe copied Michael Jordan, so it's not like he's giving us a quote-unquote original style when it comes to on-court performance. But that mentality, that never give up, that feeling that you could just feel he was trying harder than everybody else on the court. And remember, he was generally, in most nights, the most talented person on the court. And he was still trying the hardest. He was still busting his ass. We can feel that. You can't put it into exact words. We could feel that. That was the Mamba mentality. And then if I was to go with third, I would put Steph, who has revolutionized the way NBA basketball is played. You could say what you want about people now who love or hate the three-point shot and teams taking 20, 30, 40 threes a game. But that was created by Steph Curry. The modern NBA follows Steph Curry. When Steph first got into the league, there was all this talk. Charles Barkley was famous for it. You can't win a title making jump shots. Steph Curry changed that. Go all the way back. I just saw an Amon Shumpert interview, and he said it was the famous game in the Garden. Oh, she's going to take 30, 40 footers all day. Perfect. That's good defense. That's no longer good defense since Steph Curry has been in the NBA. And there's a bunch of guys who aren't as good at what he does, but the fact his existence has polarized this game around the three-point shot, something it had never been, not during Magic and Bird's era, and Bird is one of the greatest shooters ever. Not during the 90s with Michael playing, and there was great shooters then. Not in the 2000s, Reggie Miller for the 90s. Not in the 2000s, all of its great athletes, and not in the 2010s until Steph Curry became a primetime player. His impact on the game, the way the game is played, is greater than anybody's. And then you would get to LeBron, who, not to be critical of LeBron, as far as a player, LeBron obviously one of the greatest players, and a very easy argument he made, the greatest player we've ever seen. Maybe the most body created, made to play basketball human being ever. 6'9", 250 pounds, runs like that. Calling him a super athlete doesn't even do it justice. But influence? Where's LeBron's influence? Now in this article, they give him player empowerment. I'm going to be honest with you. Player empowerment was coming regardless. The more money people make, the more empowered they feel. This is not just a sports thing. This is a life thing. This is an any job thing. If you go to work and you don't have to be the CEO, you don't have to be the boss, you don't have to be the president, you don't have to be the biggest guy at the company, but you start making six figures plus, you start making at some of these jobs 7 figures, and you get a real lot of self-importance because your paychecks are getting bigger and bigger, that will empower you. Money will empower you. The more money that has come into sports, yes, LeBron has been the best player during this, but I'm not giving him player empowerment in its entirety. Money creates empowerment. Money also creates entitlement, which a lot of these guys seem to have, which I'm also not giving LeBron the negative part of that. LeBron has always finished out contracts. LeBron has always honored the deals he signed. I don't put the rampant guys who are willing to, ask for trades a year out, 2.5 years out, etc. I don't put that on LeBron. And if I'm not going to give you the negative, I can't give you all the positive. Money was going to empower these players. And let's be honest, stylistically, you can't give influence to LeBron. Nobody could be LeBron James. You can't be 6'9", 260 and do the things that he was physically gifted from God to do. It doesn't happen. So again, we got 4 basketball players who made this list. And I think that you just got to flip-flop the order, because we have AI from a cultural perspective, Kobe from a demeanor perspective and mentality, Steph for the actual gameplay that has been changed, and yes, LeBron, just on the basis of being the greatest player we've probably any of us have ever seen, especially if you're a younger person who never got to watch Michael Jordan play. But that's really where, if we're talking about influence, no. Talking about overall greatness, yes, he's number 1. And again, there's other things I could rip about this list, but the NBA and the basketball players were the biggest thing that stood out to me. Transitioning from that, I know we started late. The Bears are routinely talked about as the best opening for a head coach. Want to be a brand new head coach? Go to the Bears. They got Caleb Williams. They still have Roma Dunze. They're going to have DJ Moore. They're going to still have these pieces on defense. Everything that we were told why the Bears were going to be good this year, they're going to have next year. And if you feel like you're the right coach, why would you not want that opportunity? I'm going to bring up a name. Now, I want to be very clear here. If the Bears can get Ben Johnson, which there's some conflicting reports from people that I trust who say Ben Johnson is a very low-key kind of guy. He might not want to be in a big city like Chicago where he's going to have press around him all the time with someone like Caleb Williams, who's going to create even extra press because of the star that he is. So Ben Johnson would be my number 1 pick, but let's say those reports are correct and that's not really where he wants to be. He doesn't want to be in the super limelight. The next guy who I don't hear anyone talking about, and I feel like this is messed up because I feel like this guy got a raw deal to start. If I'm the Chicago Bears, I go after Eric Bieniemy, and I don't second guess it. Now, this again, Ben Johnson's your number 1 choice, but if you can't get Ben, why would you not go after Eric Bieniemy? Listen, Eric Bieniemy 1,000% got a raw deal. He should have already been offered a head coaching contract. It seems like he has been as much as the Rooney Rule has worked, it feels like in his case, it's who has, as a coordinator, has as many accomplishments as him, feels like it's almost worked against him, where he's getting these interviews just to pacify the Rooney Rule, and then we don't talk to him anymore. Well, he just got fired from UCLA. He must not be that good of a head coach. Maybe he just doesn't interview well. Maybe he's mean to the players like they said in Washington. That stuff could all be true, but the reality of the NFL and the reality of professional sports is we go off results. Let's look at the results of Eric Bieniemy. 50 touchdown Patrick Mahomes, multiple time MVP Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen. And now let's look at Patrick Mahomes post Eric Bieniemy. The last year Eric Bieniemy was there, MVP. And that was post Tyreek Hill. Then we've had the 2 years since Eric Bieniemy left the building. And I know Andy Reid's the play caller. Andy Reid's really the genius behind it. Why have we seen in consecutive seasons the two worst offenses for the Kansas City Chiefs since Eric Bieniemy left? Well, I know they don't have as good of tackles. Travis Kelce is older. You don't think a great play caller, a great offensive mind, which Eric Bieniemy has proven he is, couldn't work around some of these other things in regards to Travis Kelce losing a step or integrating different receivers? And I understand they've won Super Bowls without him. Fine. But their offense, the thing that he's known for, you don't give him credit because the defense is great. Steve Spagnuolo gets that credit. You don't give him credit because the special teams is great. No, their special teams coordinator gets that. Why does Eric Bieniemy not have a job? It just doesn't make sense. And I understand Ben Johnson, the Lions are rolling. He's the biggest name out there right now. But before Ben Johnson, you know who was Ben Johnson? Eric Bieniemy. Super Bowls, top 5 offenses, MVP awards for his players. Again, Ben Johnson's your first choice. But if Ben is this, wants to be low-key, doesn't want to be in the big city, doesn't want all the limelight, if that stuff is true, go give Eric Bieniemy a chance. He deserves it. I never understood, besides the obvious reasons, why Eric Bieniemy never got a chance. And by the obvious reasons, yes, I'm talking about the racial reasons. Give him a chance. We did start late today, so we're going to have a very, very short break here. And then when we come back, we have Will stopping by, as well as the most unabated fire or storyline that was just unnecessary for a team. Of course it came from the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course it did. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. This is definitely a case of expectations. There is no expectations. Rick Mace, we can go out there. He can throw the ball around. Even though he's throwing game-ending interceptions, it doesn't matter. Caleb Williams, who has played some of the best, worst football ever, like, he's not throwing interceptions, and so his passer rating still looks good. Some of the things that he's doing, but he's also not throwing touchdowns. He wasn't really giving the explosive plays. I understand the coaching in Chicago has been a shit show all year. They obviously they've been firing more and more people. They did retain Thomas Brown, though, to be the head coach. So we'll see where this goes. This is definitely a case of expectations. There is no expectations. Rick Mace, we can go out there. He can throw the ball around. Even though he's throwing game-ending interceptions, it doesn't matter. Caleb Williams, who has played some of the best, worst football. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. So, excuse me. With that, again, we are on a quicker count because I got here late. So we are going to invite Will in now. And with that, we are joined, as always, by the Father of the Year and my co-host on the group chat podcast. Will is in the building. How we doing, man?
I'm good, man.
So we kind of started this a little bit in text messages on Sunday. I'm not saying it's Caleb's fault. Obviously, there's things that are going on that are beyond his control. Obviously, starting at the coaching level and kind of working its way down. But if you're not going to assign, we've already fired the coach. We've already knocked out the coaching is the issue. At what point, I guess?
I mean, but you can't. I mean, even saying like you already fired the coach, it ain't like we upgraded that coach. Like, I mean, and
that's valid.
Like, I mean, it ain't like, oh man, we got a new coach that's supposed to be this great offensive mind in there, and it's still the same shit as like, you got a nigga that was like, he's been interim twice in one season. Like, I mean, he stepped in as the offensive coordinator. Then he said, then he was the only option left to be the head coach. I mean,
no, that's valid. That's valid. That's valid.
Go ahead, Joe.
I guess Mike. So, and maybe this is you. Let me know. Maybe this is just salty because I know. Again, root for team with rookie quarterback, and I know what Twitter's reaction was when my rookie quarterback was down 23-0 before they started moving the ball. And so, I guess I'm just curious of like, at some point, or I guess as a fan, does Caleb look like it's getting to him? Like, does it ever look like, all right, this shit, like this, obviously this season, you kind of got to throw it away, but he's obviously going to be there for many years to come. Does it feel like the lack of success this season is starting to fuck with him during games? So does he still look the same to you as he did week one or early on?
I'll say you can see like frustration on him a little bit more for sure.
Yeah. Excuse me. Is there anybody you bring back from this staff, or you just totally like you just clean house? Like or is there anything Anthony Brown can do in these last 4 games to be like, all right, yeah, you bring him back?
No.
Clean house?
Yep.
Nah,
and it's not even an indictment against him. Like, I think he kind of was throwing the short end of the stick. Just to even be put in this position to get upgraded to OC at the time that he did, and then all of a sudden to be upgraded again to head coach like a few weeks later.
That's a lot.
But I think, if I'm being honest, I didn't want him to do good as the head coach. Like, I didn't want to see us win games because, like, it's kind of like that you kind of giving the franchise the easy way out. Like, if he have a little bit of success at the end of the season, now they don't even put in real effort to go get a real head coach or nothing like that. They're just like, we see what happened with Antonio Pierce and all of that stuff. And not like, as far as like the Raiders are the Raiders, but not saying that he's not a good coach, but it's like you get in, you have a little success, and then all of a sudden they everybody act like you the guy when it's like, it's still other candidates who are more qualified than you to do the job. So it's like, you say you catch lightning in the bottle for the last however many games, and the Bears look somewhat decent, and they say, "Oh man, we got our head coach already."
I brought up at the beginning of the show.
I think we do need to overhaul the entire staff.
I brought up at the beginning of the show, and now part of this is because I think he got a raw situation, a foul situation a few years ago, and there was head coach opportunities. Um, but I believe there's some validity to Eric Bieniemy. I know Tony shot me down earlier, but if you look at it, yes, we all know Mahomes is Mahomes, and you're just never going to get that level of talent he had originally with Kansas City. We had Mahomes, Kelsey in his prime, Tyreek Hill. But if you also look at Kansas City's offense, the last 2 years post him being there has been the worst its offense has ever looked. And that was his last season there. Mahomes won NFL MVP, and that was post Tyreek Hill. Would you give?
I mean, but it's like, I mean, as interesting as that is, they won back-to-back Super Bowls. Of course, one of them was with him, and then the next one was without him. So it's not like
Correct. It's that part, and that part that could
it's like
be valid.
saying that like that they haven't looked as good without him, but still the best in the league is like.
No, you're dealing with unrealistic standards. Like what Kansas City's done looking not so great is like, I'm a hater, but like historically it's been those things you're like, man, even in like the years where they were down or years where they should have lost, like take the devil magic part aside, it's like it is impressive as hell that they can be this version of themselves, which is a bad version for them, but still coming out on top when Super Bowl is over.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask about that. So I thought this was funny. So we started talking about top 20 players all time on Sunday when we were talking then. And we got to a point where we got into a discussion of we got top 10, which we were all pretty much solidified on top 10, and then we got 11 through 20. For anyone that hasn't heard the episode, I made the case out of the guys, and I'm gonna just give this is all you. This is just your opinion, 100%. I made the case out of the guys who are 11 through 20. I kicked Jerry West out because to me, and I even put here on the notes, it's like Jerry West right hand only because my man couldn't do a crossover, man couldn't play with his left hand. So if you were to go back, and I don't know if you have the list up in front of you, or I can read off the names again. If you personally were to take someone out for like the next guy who you would think enters that conversation, whether that's we had Jokic already there. I know we started talking about like Jason Tatum, Kawhi, Russ, Harden. So between
But are these guys that in the 11 through 20, or these guys that we got outside the 20?
these are guys who are right outside the 20.
All right, so give me 11 through 20 again.
So we got KD, KG, Jokic made it, Wade, Chuck, Bill Russell, Wilt, Jerry West, Moses Malone, and Giannis. Like if let's say Luka wins, because Luka's I think is for most people that next, he's one of those guys who if he gets an MVP, a title, he's going to start putting himself in that conversation. All right, let's stick with Tatum because that was what our conversation started with. Let's say Tatum gets another title or two and he gets an MVP in these next 2 years. Who is Tatum kicking out of that 11 through 20 spot?
I mean, I think at that point it would be between a Jerry West and a Chuck. But I mean, let me see. What's Jerry West's accolades? 14-time NBA All-Star, 12 All-NBAs, 5 All-Defensive Teams, and an NBA champion.
Also 7 finals.
And the logo.
He's the logo. He also got 7 finals losses.
I mean, that's we nitpick that when we talking about GOAT, like the greatest ever. Like
not the 11.
Like I think when you get into the 11 through 20 range, like getting there 13 times might go in your favor.
No, that's valid. When the only dude like whooping you was Bill Russell and the Celtics, and those teams for their time are stacked. Like it's crazy if you look at like what the Celtics had versus what the rest of the league had. That shit was going crazy.
Wait, how many? Well, no, you said he went to the finals how many times?
You
said he got 7 losses.
It's like 7 or 8 losses. He went like 8 or 9 times and he only won 1.
Yeah. I'm thinking about something different, but yeah, I mean, but shit, if you went 8 or 9 times out of 14 years.
Yeah. I mean, hey man,
because I mean, we also when we were doing this list, we did say like respect to the times and stuff like that. Also,
correct.
So, like,
no, I'm just a hater. That's. So,
I mean, if we, I mean, shit, accolades included is almost like, yeah. I mean, it'll be Shit. Jerry West is like the easy answer, but it might be Chuck.
Chuck is close. Chuck is probably like right there at 1920. Like Chuck was like ahead of his time. Chuck is missing the accolades. Like Chuck stylistically and the way he played, he was clearly ahead of his time and he was dominating, but he doesn't have the accolades that some of these guys like Moses, I think, has 2 MVPs. KD's obviously got the 2 finals MVPs. KG's got an MVP, a finals MVP. Yeah. Speaking of current basketball, and we've been talking about this a couple times about like the ratings and the not being able to market some of these guys, like some of the storylines not just being as interesting.
Where we got Oscar Robertson? We got him in the top 10? My bad, Joe.
No, Oscar's outside the top 20.
Oh, okay.
Tony had him in the top 20, but Oscar didn't just quite make it. He's on that list of next guys up.
Okay.
But speaking of current guys, and this is a dude who I'm willing to say I think I'm wrong on so far. Tony thinks you still need more games. How come? Like, I feel like Cat, if you look at Cat's stats, you look at Cat's production. No, he doesn't have a title yet, but I'm not totally sold. And that's the only way you can find out if someone's good. Cat can pass. Cat can shoot. Cat is an athlete. He's a great rebounder, at least statistically. I know there's some people that say he's not physical enough to be a quote unquote great rebounder. How come Cat's not looked at differently in the NBA? Besides, like the famous meme with him like trying to post up DeMarcus Cousins, and I'm like, Marcus Cousins make a lot of people look like that.
Well, I think that meme is probably part of the reason. Like, I think a lot of people view him as soft. Like, good basketball player, but I think a lot of people view him as soft. And I mean, realistically, he may be like Anthony Davis in New Orleans. Of course, not as good like defensively, but like when you just talk about like a great like number 2 option, not quite enough to be a number 1 option. Can like, depending on who is on his team, maybe he could be the best player, but not like the leader type of thing.
That's valid.
Like, I mean, like, some people might debate, which I probably wouldn't. Like, people would debate whether Anthony Davis was the Lakers' best player when they won the finals or some shit like that. I wouldn't do it. But yeah, I mean, I would say, just a great second option with the right team around him or whatever. But I mean, I think as a first option, he's gonna put the numbers up.
No, it's not.
But he's not gonna take you anywhere, basically.
How many guys, in your opinion, are left like that? Like guys who just are, you could clearly start a franchise with. You're gonna be in title contention. Because I think right now the problem is where the NBA's at is obviously like the legacy guys are off the board. They're just too old, most likely to at this point of their career. But it feels like Luka's one of the best players in the league, but people still aren't quite convinced he can get you a title. Giannis is one of the best players in the league, and it's like, well, we got one, but then there's a bunch of playoff disappointment. Jokic got one, and now it looks like the Nuggets are regressing. Who left in the league feels like A1 player, best player on your team, could lead you to a title? And I guess also for Tatum's point is a lot of people don't give Tatum the credit because everyone right now feels like the Celtics are by far the best team as far as overall roster.
Yeah, no, I don't care about that, though. I mean, like, I'm giving Tatum the credit because we watched him, like, knock on the door every year. Like, most teams don't get a chance to knock on the door as many times as the Celtics got to knock on the door. Like, so it's I would give it to him. I mean, and I also feel like Tatum probably should have been Finals MVP, but that's just me.
I agree with you.
I mean, what I mean, and it don't really matter or whatever, but like, I think like people try to use that to make it seem like Jaylen Brown is their best player, and I like Jaylen. I like Jaylen Brown a lot also, but whatever. So how many guys can be that guy?
Yeah, how many guys feel like they can be that guy right now?
I don't know. It's tough because I did feel that way about Book, and I mean, like, even I think part of them getting to the finals was a big thing when because he was clearly the number 1 option on that team when they got to the finals. He was putting up the numbers, throughout the playoffs and all of that stuff. Also,
1,000%.
I'm just trying to think about every team's best player. Like, Even like, of course, like the Bulls, they don't have shit like that. I mean, you know, a bunch of young players, but even when you talk about like your team, like as far as the Pelicans go, like I don't think they have anybody over there that can
Not
be
even close.
You know, like even a healthy Zion, don't like after what we've seen from him as far as you know, he could put up the numbers, but it's like
He don't
him
got
being
it.
your best player ain't a title.
Yeah, no, it just again, there's like guys who are clearly like even you and I who've been probably more critical of Luka than most people. Is Luka's talent and his ability and his stats, they're all there. Those things are undeniable. But it's like it feels like he just doesn't quite have it to be your best player and to get you that far. Even though I know the Mavericks are coming off of the best example of he could be that this year.
Yeah, I mean, but then like, and that's why I would say that would kind of almost be like the same case I can make for Devin Booker, like you know, saying that they made it, and you talking about without a Kyrie Irving, like he had an old CP3 and a young DeAndre Ayton, who I don't even know if he's still starting today.
But it's in Portland, so don't nobody
But
really
that's
check
yeah. So, but I mean, but that's but I'm saying like he, you know, he didn't have a Kyrie Irving like you know a proven champion and all of that stuff on his team, but Luka is like one of those guys, and I mean Luka still got plenty of time to kind of change the perception, you know, around that stuff.
No, 1,000%.
Who else? Who? Let's like who are these? Who are the players that we talk about like in MVP discussions that haven't won titles?
So I think just
Luka
off
is
of
probably the main one because I mean Jokic has a title, Tatum has a title, and you know you got Giannis.
I mean Embiid, but I think Embiid is kind of I think Embiid has worked himself out of.
Yeah, I think with his I would say mostly with his health problems, and then I mean even if you talk about playoff like success, it's like I think a lot of that stuff with him is attributed to not being healthy. Also,
no, 1,000%.
So I wouldn't put him in that anymore, like in that conversation as far as he could possibly take you to a title because he just can't stay healthy enough to do it. So I wouldn't put him.
The Thunder have the best seed in the West right now. They got the best record. SGA.
No.
I don't feel that way about him. I'm so close with Ant. Ant feels like
he got everything like necessary. Like Ant feel like
I just got to see it like a fully like realize. Like I was hoping for them to go to. I would have much rather had them than Dallas in the finals last year, but it's hard for me to say, even though I feel like he should be that guy because you just lost to Luka, who I adamantly think isn't that guy. I'm like I need to see the playoff run where like you do put it together, even if you don't win the finals, but like you either get to the finals or like Game 7 Western Conference Finals type stuff.
But even then, like you talking about, was this Ant's first playoff run or second?
Second, I think. Yeah, I think Minnesota's made back-to-back years. Yeah. So this was their first deep run, which it was second round, and they went 6 games to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like Ant. I feel like I feel like he could be that guy. It'll just depend on and it's so interesting like when you talk about like because I mean that's like because you know everybody talk about like the Celtics being like an all-time great team and it's like and I mean I know Luka is still like super young and I just think about the last great Dallas Maverick and it's like we watched the team that was supposed to be so overwhelming and you know when you talk about that Miami Heat team and like we watched Dirk kind of do it but you know also Dirk went to the finals once earlier in his career and didn't get the job done either so it's hard to I mean with some it's really hard to say with some of these young players because I'm sure it's probably a lot of people even up until the Mavericks probably won that title most people probably may have been having that conversation about Dirk like can he be the best player on the title team.
Yeah.
And I guess for a lot of players, really, that might be the conversation until you get one. Really, like I mean,
1,000%.
You know, like I think winning the championship changes the way most of the players maybe in the top 50 of you. Like,
oh yeah,
if Chuck win a title, we ain't debating whether Chuck is outside the top 15 or not. Like, or if he 19 or 20.
We said that with AI. If AI had a
But if
ring,
Melo win a title, Melo probably. And my listen, y'all, couldn't nobody tell me. If Melo had a title, couldn't nobody tell me nothing anyway. So it's like, but even AI like with a title, top 15 easily, like no debating it.
I'm gonna get you out of here on this. I'm just curious, and this is remember everybody listening. Will is from Chicago, so Bleacher Report put out the top 25 most iconic athletes, and I think this is what's their cutoff here, just so I don't want to misquote them. This is top 25 most influential sports figures since 2000. So that's how I want to say this to be clear. He technically counts, but we'll see where the caveat goes. And for basketball specifically, the top 4 guys were LeBron was 1. This is most influential. LeBron was 1. Steph was 2. Kobe was 3. AI was 4. My question is, A, is that correct? And B, does Mike still in there even though he only has played, it's like a season and a half post 2000? Just because the overall, like Michael Jordan's the most famous names on the planet.
What is it? The most what's the list titled again?
Most influential athletes since 2000. Now this isn't their exact order, but these are the top 4 NBA or top 4 basketball players. So like LeBron was actually 1 overall, Steph was 2 overall, Kobe was 6, and AI was 19.
No, I think that's right. Like I think I said of the 2000
since 2000, yeah.
Since 2000, yeah. I think it's right. Because outside of like the 1 year, he's a former athlete. Like he doesn't have you could talk about like Jordan being influential as a cultural thing and all of that stuff, but like I don't think that's like incorrect though.
No, I'm in agreement with the 4 names, especially again if you want to go overall impact. Like it's just hard to
like we ain't talking about like culture or nothing like that. I think it's like influencing like the game and influencing the sport. Like it's a lot of these kids now that should just know about Jordans because they're Jordans. That's just what they grew up hearing and seeing. Like don't necessarily even realize like, oh, this was the greatest basketball player ever. In most people's eyes and stuff like that. It's just the shoes are just a part of the culture.
1000%. 10 seconds. So, and I think they're fine. And again, it's impossible. I'm not even going to bring Kobe into this because I think that's more. I think Kobe's impact is definitely more cultural. If we're just doing game of basketball, should LeBron or Steph be 1? I say Steph, only because he has literally changed the entirety of the way basketball is played. LeBron's better. LeBron's obviously like in contention for the greatest player of all time, but I think LeBron's influence. I know they give him player empowerment. I'm kind of inclined to think player empowerment was happening anyway, but Steph, LeBron, who you got number 1?
I would lean towards Steph, and I always say like it's hard to sit like, and I guess it depends on what they base an influential off of because it's like I don't know. I guess LeBron may have influenced the game in ways like off of the court, outside of like actually on the court. I don't know because it's like you don't see like the average player can't try to be LeBron James. They're not, practicing to do what LeBron James does. Like,
can't be 6'8", 250.
Yeah, you can't practice that. It's either you are or you are not.
1,000%.
And it obviously don't matter if you have the same DNA as LeBron James.
Shots fired. I told y'all this nigga was from Chicago. With that being said, appreciate you for going on the show, bro. Don't forget to check out Will Group Chat Podcast dropping every Sunday. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week, man.
For sure.
Appreciate Will for stopping by, of course. I want to say this really quick before we get into the second hour so there's an issue. So Philadelphia is probably one of the, either them or the Lions are probably just top to bottom the best roster in the NFL. The reason, though, why so many more people, myself included, like the Lions over the Eagles, is the Lions' structure, their culture, it just looks like it's more solid. I've said this all year about the Eagles. I love what they have on offense. I love what they have on defense. But the reality is I don't trust Nick Sirianni with almost anything. And the last 48 hours, the A.J. Brown comment after the game about what we need to improve on, passing, like you didn't even want to say offense or the passing game as a whole, and try to, add some, just went straight after Jalen Hurts. This feels like lack of direction, lack of leadership. The problem that Philadelphia has had for the last couple of years, which all lies in their coaching. This is a team that's on a 7-game win streak. All the vibes should be up. This should feel like one of the teams that could win a Super Bowl. It should feel, if you are an Eagles fan, this should feel like one of the best times of the year. And arguably your best player, however you want to rank him in Saquon, comes out and says, our quarterback is struggling, our passing is struggling. And you've been, the best thing that's happened to you all year is Saquon's success and the fact that he has a chance to break the all-time rushing record, and you're over here being the receiver worried about, well, I don't have enough catches. And it's not even like you're in a contract year. You got paid as a first-round pick. The Eagles paid you when they got you, and they just gave you a new contract last offseason. So you've always been well compensated. So there's not even the argument that, oh, he wants to catch more passes because he's in a contract year. Everything, like, again, Philadelphia feels like they should easily be one of the 2 to 3 best teams in football. And from a pure roster perspective, they are. But I have a lot of issues with their coaching, and that just felt like the real, if you had to put it into words or you had to paint a picture of what bad coaching, bad leadership, bad management looks like, this whole last 48 hours of Philadelphia, that's what it looks like. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back for hour 2. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Welcome to Hour 2. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Let's start here because this is the story that didn't make a lot of sense to me until it did. We're going to get to QbBar after in the next segment. Bill Belichick story came out about probably 40 to 72 hours ago, just out of nowhere. Bill Belichick was interviewing for the North Carolina head coaching job. And this kind of threw everybody off. It did. It was like, what? The arguably greatest, I think inarguable greatest head coach in the history of professional football is going to go to college? It's weird. And essentially because we had seen him do all these media things this year, and it felt like, oh, this is setting himself up to get back in the NFL, because when Bill talks, there is this level of football knowledge that you just know the regular fan, the regular person, even a head coach talking on TV or former head coach talking on TV just doesn't quite have. He has forgotten more football than most of us will ever learn in our lives, as they say. And then the report came out and it said, Bill Belichick accepts job for UNC's head football coach. And I thought, wow, he's really going. I was shocked. But it was weirdly worded. Because he'd said, or basically how the story actually played out was, he accepted the job, but they had to accept his conditions if he was actually gonna go. And it was this 400-page sets of rules, funding, coaching hours, all this stuff, and that's when it made sense. Bill Belichick has historically been noted as a control freak. He was the head coach and GM. His draft rooms were him and his dog. He wanted essentially total control over everything, and as he got more and more success, more and more rings, he got that. Robert Kraft said, you, Tom, here's the franchise, do what you want, keep winning, and he did that for 20 years. Once we got to the post-Tom Brady prime and the post-Bill Belichick prime, and once we got to post them being together, some of the flaws of Bill started to show more. Now, I do give him credit, which I think is an underrated thing. He did make the playoffs with Mac Jones post-Tom Brady, which is, look how you ever seen Mac Jones play lately? That's actually an accomplishment. But Bill has always wanted this control. Bill has always wanted this kind of power. And from the looks of it, he's not really willing to part with it. And as we've seen him now, no longer in his coaching prime and no longer attached to Tom Brady, I don't think a whole lot of teams are willing to give him that kind of power. So of course, even with the NIL, even with the transfer portal, coaches have more power in college than they do in the NFL. In the NFL, guys just make too much money. What do you really tell your star quarterback if he's not on page with you? You know, if he's making 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars a year, what do you really do with him? Yes, the NIL, these guys are making several $1 million as well. They're still much younger. They're still much more impressionable. And because they still want to get to the NFL, and you being the statistically and by all accounts the greatest to ever do it at that level, your opinion and your words, they hold weight. They have power. So when I found out, oh, he gave them this huge 400-page book and said, these are the rules, these are the terms, these are my conditions to come there, that made sense. Does it make sense for Bill Belichick to go for a college program? No. I think Bill Belichick wants the all-time wins record. You're not going to get that in the college, obviously, compared to the pros. But I also don't think Bill is going to want to deal with the quote-unquote new-aged athlete who has just, Bill is in a time that has been forgotten. These coaches that are screaming their heads off and just yelling all the time, and it's discipline, discipline, discipline. Those guys, you don't see them nearly as much. Not the guys can't be hard, not the guys can't be tough, but the guys who have success in the NFL now are high-end offensive scheme guys, Reed, Shanahan, McVay, high-end culture builders, which is more than just screaming and yelling, Dan Campbell, easiest one to go with. We just talked about Philadelphia, their lack of a culture building. And there's only really, in Bill's case, only a handful of real defensive-minded head coaches who are still having success in the NFL. Sean McDermott, but he has Josh Allen. Like, we just don't have a lot of more examples or a lot more ideas of where Bill Belichick in 2024 could go and have success in the NFL. So if you're him, why would you not go to a school that's going to essentially give you all the same power that you used to have in New England? Why would you not go to a program that's going to say, hey, all yours, buddy. We're going to give you the funding. We're going to give you the players. Everything is yours, man. We're going to make sure it's right for you. And if you're UNC, who was not a traditional college power, it's like, it's not in Alabama. It's not in Ohio State. It's not in LSU. Bill Belichick immediately brings notoriety, attention, and it's a guy who, yes, he said he wants to be a pipeline for the NFL. Again, when you are the winningest head coach in all of NFL history, the pipeline to the NFL, it makes sense that you are the pipeline. Yes, Nick Saban put a bunch of guys in the NFL. Why? Because he was not only the most successful college coach ever. Who was Nick Saban's essentially, I don't know these people, but it was essentially his public best friend. It was Bill Belichick. So not only can I create the best program, I have access to the guy who does this at the next level better than anybody, and I can get you in contact with him. So, again, does Bill really make sense for college football in 2024? I don't know. But what he offered and what he wants, that makes total sense. He's a guy that wants to keep his control. He's a guy that wants to keep his stance. He wants the power. He wants that dynamic. He doesn't want to answer to people. And guys that have success, that's generally how it goes. Once you've gotten to a point where you can have success, like think of people who just work for themselves, CEOs, guys, presidents of businesses. Once you have had success and you don't have someone directly to answer to, you don't want to go back to directly answering to somebody. So he wants to have it all in clear guidelines, clear writing. If I do this, you get out of my way, you give me what I want, and I will bring you to relevancy. So that's my Bill Belichick, why he wants to go to UNC. I wanted to talk about this. So obviously I did Monday night check-in as I normally do. And I was watching the Cowboys-Bengals game. Not very exciting, even though Jamar Chase, hell of a player. Obviously, he's going to get paid all the money in the world. And Cincinnati has just cost himself even more money by not signing him earlier. But I wanted to address this because there's been a lot of conversation. I don't do a lot of Cowboys talk here because I'm just not the guy who does Cowboy talks. You get it everywhere. You get ESPN, FS1. Everybody does Cowboy talks because, yes, their fans tune in and watch more TV than everybody else. So they are justifiably for a business better for numbers. But I did talk about before the season, Mike McCarthy had one of the more impressive blind resumes. Yes, there's playoff losses, but he still has a Super Bowl win. He has multiple 12-win seasons. He has a bunch of top 5 offenses. And if you just did the blind resume of Mike McCarthy, I was genuinely impressed. And I don't get impressed by blind resumes very often. It's usually very easy to see who it is, what's the circumstances, context, all these things build up, and it's very easy to figure out the blind resume. But Mike's blind resume was actually impressive. I was genuinely impressed. And that made me think, and now you've gotten over the last couple of weeks, Dak has come out and defended him and said, hey, I think he deserves a chance. Jerry Jones has come out and defended him and say, hey, I think he deserves a chance. Mike is talking about him. Hey, man, yeah, we could bring back Mike. Like all these different things. Troy Aikman just did a radio interview, says, you know, look, if you're not going to bring in Belichick, who clearly has the better resume, what other coaches are you going to bring in that have a resume that is equal to Mike McCarthy? And this got me thinking. And I went back to when I looked at his blind resume and I said, you know what? I think there's something here. I think because of the Cowboys and there's this perception, which is probably true, that Jerry wants someone that he can control, fine. But if I want someone that I can control, I also want someone that I can control and is going to have success. And McCarthy, again, several 12-win seasons, several top 5 offenses. He is one of the better head coaches in the NFL. He just doesn't look the part. He doesn't look like Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't look like Sean McVay. He doesn't look like Kevin O'Connell. He's not one of these offensive gurus. He's not Dan Campbell physically where you could just feel his presence and the culture that he's building. But Mike has everything else. And if you're the Cowboys, and here's the biggest thing, and this is normally when guys and this matters a lot. Even though I know all these guys make millions of dollars, I know all these guys, it's your job, you're expected to do this. But there's a clear difference when a team is not doing well and you can see someone who has lost the locker room and someone who hasn't. I argue there's, on a smaller example, because not as big of a marketing team, Doug Peterson with the Jaguars, I don't think he's lost the locker room. Versus Gerard Mayo with the Patriots, and it's only year one, I think there's some locker room divide there. Antonio Pierce, the Raiders, they play hard. May not be very good, but they play hard. He has not lost the locker room. The Bears, Eberflus, lost the locker room. The Saints, Dennis Allen, lost the locker room. Because you got to remember, all these guys, to whatever degree or whatever level you want to say, they can all coach. They've all gotten multiple contracts. And for the most part, they have all had to work their way up and get here. And Mike's no different, and Mike has had success as a coach. So Mike McCarthy might be the perfect Cowboys coach. And it's just up for you. You know, you're going to make your own decision. I'm going to make my own. But the reality is, as long as Jerry makes it, that's who's going to stay. Because he is a guy who Jerry likes, whether we think that's easily controlled or not. Okay. He's a guy who produces 12-win seasons. I know not this year, but the Cowboys also could argue, even though I don't think this is fair, you could justify this season went to hell because you lost Dak. Now, it was already going to hell prior to losing Dak, but there was no chance for rebound. Most NFL teams have no chance to rebound or have a successful NFL season once their $60 million quarterback goes down. So, Jerry likes him. Dak likes him. He's produced 12-win seasons. He's got a Super Bowl. He might be, and Jerry, to his credit, good or bad, and I tend to like this, it just has to be the right person. Jerry gives really long leashes. Jason Garrett was there forever, even though most people felt like he spent 3 or 4 years longer than he should have. McCarthy, some people have asked for him to be fired earlier in his tenure. People are obviously asking for him to be gone now. But the players seem to like him. He hasn't lost the locker room. He's had success. And again, if you're Jerry and you're the Cowboys, you're going to get a top pick. You're still going to have Micah Parsons. You're still going to have CeeDee Lamb. You're going to have Dak coming back, which, you know, I know it's off injury, but Dak has technically already come back from a severe injury at one point of his career and continued to play well. Like, there's a lot here that justifies Mike McCarthy coming back as the Cowboys head coach. You might not think he's one of the best head coaches in the NFL, but a lot of teams don't have one of the best head coaches in the NFL. When you start breaking down that after you get past that first 6 or 7 guys, and I stood up for Dave Canales yesterday, after you pass that first 6, 7 guys, there's a lot of not so good coaching going on in the NFL. And if Jerry feels like he's got a guy that listens to him, a guy that the locker room likes, a guy who's got results, that's your Cowboys head coach for the next however many years they want to bring this back. When we come back, we're going to talk about a QB who I think we just have to acknowledge, even though he has made a Super Bowl, even though he has been a Pro Bowler, even though he's been in the MVP conversation at one point of his career, he's just okay. That's it. He's just okay. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily.
you want to go the God route, you want to make it DBZ, fine. I don't think that's very interesting.
No, I agree.
And I think that like you can do these crazy like I think one of the things people hoped for with Boruto, and it was when we went to go see that movie years ago, and it's when we got like the manga announced and when they announced the show and everything.
Mhm.
And the hope was that it would go back to the roots of what made Naruto popular.
Mhm.
I just think the creators didn't understand what made Naruto good. For us,
No,
there's
I agree.
gonna be an audience of people that want ass kicking. I just don't think it's the fun. Like, I don't think that's fun.
It's
Oh,
it.
wow, Boruto has hands. And I'm like, but me too, man. Like, I don't know. Like,
And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in again. So, I know. Once you reach a certain status, it should feel almost impeachable until it's the end of your career or end of your run of doing whatever you are. If you hit certain accolades, that should be it forever. You win an MVP, you're an MVP for the rest of your life. You're a Super Bowl champ, you're a Super Bowl champion the rest of your life. But that's not actually always how it works. You can regress even if you've hit the highest of highs. Jalen Hurts, and I know I criticized earlier Nick Sirianni and said his leadership is what allowed this kind of dragging to happen, but I'm somebody online. I'm not A.J. Brown. I'm not in the locker room. But the regression of Jalen Hurts is kind of wild. Think about it. Top 3 in MVP. Got a 14-plus win season under his belt. Might get another one. Went to the Super Bowl. Almost beat the Chiefs. Everybody was on Jalen Hurts. That was his highest peak. And it was like, oh my gosh, look at what Jalen's doing. It's amazing. Oh my gosh. And look at what he is now. The Eagles have a great offensive line with or without Jason Kelce retiring. The Eagles have probably the best set of wide receivers in the NFL, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. And they have arguably the league MVP at running back with Saquon Barkley. And Jalen Hurts is just kind of along for the ride, not to mention the number 1 overall defense. Like, at what point, like, what else does Jalen Hurts need to succeed? This is essentially, the Eagles are, appropriately, Alabama for the NFL. These guys are all, this is a stacked team, great on defense, great on offensive line, receivers, running backs. Like, what else do you need? And I know they're on a 7-game win streak, but it's not because of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts isn't going to get MVP votes. It's because of Saquon Barkley. It's because of Devontae Smith. It's because of A.J. Brown. Like, these are the guys who are over-delivering, over-performing. Like, when are we, like, it's just, I don't get it. How come Jalen Hurts doesn't feel like, put any other quarterback that we associate star, superstar, top 10, top 15, like whoever quarterback you consider to be one of the best in the league, put them on this Philadelphia team. It would feel unfair immediately. Put Mahomes there. Super Bowl champion, no questions asked. Okay, well, that's not fair. It's Mahomes. Put Josh Allen there. Super Bowl champion, no questions asked. Put Joe Burrow there. Super Bowl question, no questions asked. Lamar Jackson, like Justin Herbert. How many guys can we go down the list and we're like, if you put them on Philadelphia, where would they be? And let's put this, a lot of you don't like Jared Goff. A lot of you don't think Jared Goff is a great quarterback. You just kind of think he's along for the ride for the Lions. What's the difference between Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts? And if anything, why is Jared Goff not considered better than Jalen Hurts? He's more accurate. He runs the offense better and doesn't have quite near the defense. And even though he does have a receiver and a tight end, Jalen Hurts has 2 great receivers and a great tight end. Like, at what point are we going to start asking a little more of Jalen Hurts and not expecting more of Jalen Hurts? Like, you have the best situation in the NFL and this is how we're doing it? Don't make sense to me. And with that being said, welcome back to another week of the QbBar. This is how are the best ranking of quarterbacks on the internet. You know how it goes. Associates, junior partner, senior partner, managing partner, and who needs to go back to school this week. This is the best breakdown of how quarterbacks are playing in today's NFL. And let's get started with going back to school this week. Need a little more time. Oh, we got 4 guys. So, listen. Kirk Cousins, you might just need to go back home and be a family man. Kirk Cousins, it's been really bad the last 4 weeks. 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. It's not looking great here. Derek Carr, I'm kind of doing this as a similar boat to Kirk Cousins. Now, I feel a little bad for Derek Carr because he did hurt his hand, and so I don't want to demote someone on injury because of injury. But look, man, workers' comp is workers' comp, and this is a law firm. So you got to go. Jameis Winston, it was fun. It was a fun couple of weeks, and it was a fun victory against Pittsburgh. But Jameis Winston is showing you why Jameis Winston is who he is, which is a lot of talent, but a lot of inconsistencies, throwing interceptions, not consistently great quarterback play. And Anthony Richardson was on a bye, so I'm not going to move him up or down. He stays where he is. First-year associates. Aaron Rodgers moves up. Aaron Rodgers, his first 300-yard game in years, which is insane to think about for someone of his caliber. Bryce Young, again, number 1 overall pick. He took the benching and he did what a lot of people can't do at 22, 23 years old, which is, hey, we're going to move you backwards so that one day we can move you forwards. He took the criticism, he took the coaching, he took the experience. Bryce Young has been playing really good football. I know it's the Carolina Panthers and they don't win a lot of games, but the Carolina Panthers, take this into consideration, they are favored for the first time since December of 2022. Almost 2 full years of being the underdogs in games. And now they are finally the favorites playing the Dallas Cowboys. Drake May, Caleb Williams, again, the third and fourth best rookie of this quarterback class. Drake May not playing a lot of expectations. Caleb Williams, I know they got blasted by the 49ers, but we were kind of talking about with Will earlier. I don't blame Caleb, but at some point I do need to start seeing Caleb perform better before he's down 20-0 or 24-0. And again, yes, I'm a little salty because I know if another rookie quarterback is down 24-0, I know what Twitter would be saying. I know what online would be saying. So there's Caleb Williams. Kyler's got to move down. Kyler is like the most, when it looks great, it's great. But when it looks bad, it's really bad. And these last couple of weeks, it's looked really bad. I don't know if that's because the new Black Ops is out or what's going on, but like, Kyler, and we just talked about Jalen Hurts. If anything, yes, is he probably better than the other 5 quarterbacks on this row? Yes, but he's doing the least with the most, which just doesn't sit really well in my eyes. He's got all the resources, offensive line, receivers, tight end, great defense, and it still feels like he's just okay. Second years, Brock Purdy had a hell of a game. And I know the Bears we can criticize a lot, but the Bears have had and do have one of the better defenses in the NFL. And I know none of us are sold on Purdy getting a $50-60 million contract. The 49ers did come out and say they plan on extending him, but no one knows if it's going to be quite in those numbers yet. But you can't deny the way he's been playing. Russ, yeah, a little salty, but hey, man, he's playing well. He's only lost 1 game this season. I've heard some MVP conversation from like national shows, and that's wild to me, but Russ is playing well. Give him his credit. My controversial associates, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud. Look, man, we saw Love play the Lions. It is what it is. Is he supremely talented? Yes. Is he going to make plays? Yes. Does he still turn the ball over too much, for my opinion? Yes. CJ, again, I want to see more. I just need to see that next. Like, we need to see the improvement. Geno Smith, I did move him down. He was a junior partner last week. I don't know what to make of the Seahawks, and I don't know what to make of Geno, if I'm being totally honest with you. The Seahawks, I don't think, are a great football team, but they continue to win games, and Geno being the most consistent part of this team clearly means something, but I just don't think, in my mind's eye, I can really put him with the next group of guys. I just can't do it. Maybe that's unfair, but that's just the way I see it. And Tua's been playing really well. The Dolphins are going to be this year's version of this is going to be the best team that misses the playoffs. Like, especially, and it's going to be really easy to note why, which is those weeks that they didn't have Tua, where they were the worst offense in football. Tua has proven a lot this year as far as his value to the team. Coming into this year, there was a lot of, it's Mike McDaniel's scheme. It's Tyreek Hill. It's Jalen Waddle. No, this offense, it works with Tua. Tua has to be there. So give Tua his credit. First year junior partners. So I moved the only movement in this. So obviously Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels both came off a bye. So I really wasn't going to move them up or down. Justin Herbert. Look, is Justin Herbert the best quarterback in this column? Yes, unequivocally. But I'm still, I brought this up yesterday. Why does Justin Herbert still feel this streaky? Like, one game he's out there, like for a half he looks amazing, and another half they get shut out. He goes on 10 of the greatest throws you've ever seen in your life, and then he doesn't have a completion. Like, it's just weird to me that even with, and I know they're running the ball more, I know that's Jim Harbaugh's style of team, but the reality is here, like, Herbert should be better, right? I just ripped Jalen Hurts and said, you know what, he should be better with everything he's done. Herbert doesn't feel like he's improved since he got into the league, and the only reason it's passable or justifiable is because he came in the league so good so quickly that we're like, oh, okay, that's fine. But he hasn't improved. He's still really streaky. He goes a half without scoring a point. It's just weird to me, and so I'm not willing to have. So I did have to knock him down. Yes, did they lose in the same weird way that everybody's losing the Chiefs this year? I'm not going to hold that against them, but the fact you got shut off for an entire half, I am going to hold that and the streakiness. Second years, if this will show up, there you go. Second years, Matt Stafford is amazing. Like, I know Josh Allen, we went full alien mode, full force of nature, 6 touchdowns, but Stafford was also great in that same game. The fact the Rams are even where they're at in the season right now, Stafford, you got to give him a lot of credit for that. He's been playing amazing with injuries to everybody, with a really young defense. Like, Stafford's been playing his heart out. Kirk Cousins, not Kirk Cousins, sorry. Sam Darnold, this is the best he's ever looked in his career. Just had a 5-touchdown game, which is why he was already here last week, but now I feel much more confident about him. And Baker, he's been throwing the ball everywhere. Again, Baker, probably a little too many turnovers, probably should be down, but I don't think the Bucs are near this position without the success of Baker Mayfield. Then we go to seniors. 3 of the 4 are the same, the exception being Mahomes. We have moved him down for managing. Look, these are 3 of the 4 best, same with last week. These are 3 of the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Lamar was obviously on a bye. Jared Goff, you saw what they did. Joe Burrow, Monday Night Football. He continues to put up these numbers. No, Joe Burrow cannot be the MVP. The Bengals are not good enough. And Mahomes, again, we understand who he is. But when you lose these games, or when you win these games in a way that you don't feel like the reason, I can't put you at the top of the league. We understand your resume. We understand what you've done. But I just can't do it. Which means, of course, the force of nature, Josh Allen, 6 touchdowns. What more can you say? I understand the Rams have a young defense, but it's not a bad defense by any means. Jared Verse in the Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation. 6 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns his last 2 weeks. I know his receiving touchdown is kind of fake or weird, but the end zone 9 times in a 2-week span. He's one of the best quarterbacks, and currently, if you had to end the season today, it's either him or Saquon Barkley for MVP. This is obviously a quarterback ranking, so overall players, Saquon would have an argument for this spot, but if we're just doing quarterbacks, you got to go Josh Allen, top of the line right now. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. I'm joined, as always, by the Father Willis in the building. How we doing, man?
Sensational.
How was drinking after 40? I hear that shit hits harder.
Drinking after 40 is crazy. Number one, I never said I was. First off, I'm 32. As of like a week and a half ago. Second, I didn't even say I was drinking. I just said I was outside.
So you gonna convince everybody you was outside and had no alcoholic beverages at all?
Nah. I'm just saying I never said I was drinking. I ain't say I wasn't either.
I understand. Understandable. This nigga said in the text message before we got on this shit talking about like, yo, I'm about to have a macchiato.
I did not say I was about to have a macchiato. Tony said something about Italian, so I just named it Italian style.
I heard macchiato.
No, I said you can never go wrong with a macchiato. I got regular coffee though.
And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody that is here still. So, where did I just put it? I wanted to look something up here really quick for you guys. So, I wanted to go over a topic that I see a lot and I just don't think people understand. It's natural for teams to struggle, right? Like, how do you phrase this correctly? When teams struggle, they do bad, they have a poor record. How sports leagues create parity is they match up bad records to bad records. That way, a team that got slightly better is going to look like they got way better because they're beating up the other teams that still stayed bad. This is how we get examples of worst to first, and it's normally going off a fourth place schedule to then playing a much easier, so they're playing an easier schedule, and they get more wins because of that. This is the Houston Texans from last year. Yes, do they get credit for DeMeco Ryans? 1,000%. Do they get credit for drafting C.J. Stroud? 1,000%. They also played a weaker schedule. And so, this is the thing about this. So because of that, you can get more parity. You can get teams that have these quicker turnarounds because you're playing weaker competition. And if you got better and you got better than your opponents, this is what happens. Then, so that made me think, who is most likely to be the big improvement next season? And while I don't like this, and I'm not sure it's going to necessarily result in the wins because I think they're in a really tough division, I think this bodes really well for both Oakland, or Vegas now, I'm sorry, I'm used to calling them Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Chicago Bears. Because what people don't realize, the Vegas gets, if Antonio Pierce is really the guy, and I think there's some worries about that, but I genuinely like Antonio Pierce as head coach. And they get Shedeur Sanders. And they nail another draft. Brock Bowers was a hit this year. Max Crosby's still a superstar. And Jacoby Myers is probably the best receiver no one ever talks about. I understand I'm not saying he's top 5 or top 10, but he's a really good receiver. He gets open. This is going to be a team that's going to beat up a lot of the other fourth place teams. And they're going to beat up a lot of the other third place teams when it comes to interdivisional play. Now, does it suck in their division? The AFC West and the NFC North for both these teams is going to be two of the toughest divisions. These are most likely the two divisions that are going to put 3 teams in the playoffs this year. Like in the AFC side, it's the West or the North. And in the NFC, I think it's just the North by a wide margin. But if Antonio Pierce, Shedeur Sanders, another good draft class, Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, like these guys, you're starting to see talent form, and this is going to be one of the not easy, but this is going to be one of the, I think, easier teams to say they're going to be much better next year. Get the quarterback right, you can see the talent. Chicago, who's going to have a fourth place schedule, is going to have way more talent than most of the other fourth place teams. And you're going to have year 2 with Caleb. You get your head coach search right, whether it's Ben Johnson or, again, I said earlier in the show, get Eric Bieniemy. You get the right guy in there. You've already got talent on defense that we know about. Sweat, Johnson. You're still going to have 2 of your 3 receivers. Maybe Keenan Allen's not there next year. We'll see what he does if they re-sign him or not. You're still going to have Cole Kmet. You're going to have a chance with a top pick to help solidify that offensive line. You go get one of the best tackles in the draft. Some of these things are easier to see. I picked this out. Go listen to my 2 years ago, Tony and I did the preview show for the beginning of last season. And one of my best hits is I said, Houston playing a last place schedule. CJ Stroud, D'Amico Ryans. I liked other guys on their roster. Nico Collins. There's other guys. Stingley. There was talent, in my opinion, that was forming. Now, I didn't predict them doing as well as they did, but I did have them in. This is going to be the most improved teams in the NFL. It's the opposite of what made Tampa last year so impressive. Is Tampa had a first place schedule replacing Tom Brady, and Baker Mayfield still did that. Because even though Tampa had a losing record, the NFC South was so bad, that's what happened. And so, again, I don't think enough people really view, I don't think that's taken into consideration when saying, okay, what teams are going to be better, what teams are going to improve more. A lot of that just comes from scheduling. And since we talked about a bunch of head coach offers today, I feel really bad, and I intersect with them on Twitter because I'm a Pelicans fan, and so a lot of New Orleans sports I see. The Saints have the worst head coach opening by a mile. I saw something about, Ben Johnson might consider the Saints because it's going to be low profile. Owner gives you a lot of leeway. It's not the media circus that some of these other cities are. New Orleans is in cap hell, not just this year, not just next year, not just the year. They're basically in 4 straight years of cap hell. What Sean did with Denver was different. There was one contract that was obviously the outlier, that was obviously the problem, that was Russell Wilson. They figured out a way, split Russ across 2 years, drafted a rookie quarterback, and you get the richest owner in sports. There was things they did to help offset this horrible cap situation. New Orleans is not going to be in that scenario. That's not going to be available to them. They're just, whatever coach takes the Saints head coaching job, that's going to be hell for the next several years. Now, maybe they just leave Rizzy there because he's already got a relationship with the players. They like him, and you're not, why waste, if you're going to use your big silver bullet to get the head coach, why get him right now when you're clearly not in a position where it's going to be as impactful, even if you hit on next year's draft or hit on the draft after that. In 3 years, if you give Rizzy a year and then you give another guy a year or two, now if you've hit on a couple drafts, you've peeled back all of your cap hell, now you go make the big hire for a head coach. So, again, I think the Raiders, the Bears are going to be real easy picks, especially with the Vikings. I think there's going to be some fall off with Sam Darnold, who's going to go somewhere. I don't know. I said this yesterday. I don't know what team is going to want to sign him, and the Vikings have to play JJ because they use the top 10 pick, top 11 pick on him. They're going to be better in division. I think the Vikings are going to fall back a bit. The Raiders are going to move up, even though I think it's going to be hard because that division is still tough. And when we go over to Tampa, the NFC South, where the Saints are, that's going to be a really tough rebuild. Also, speaking of New Orleans, though, shout out to Antonio Daniels. Looking forward to that. I know. I appreciate what CJ McCollum did. He took New Orleans with a really young Brandon Ingram and a really young Zion Williamson, and he brought this taut winning behavior. But now there's reports that CJ is being targeted by other teams. The Pelicans are 5-20. Brandon Ingram's probably going to have to go, which is that one I'm really sad about and unfortunate. But if CJ were to be traded, I think it's time. Trey Murphy's there. Jordan Hawkins is there. You're going to have another top 5 pick. You're going to have all these guys who it's time to get their playing time in. Let CJ go play for a contender. And he's taking up space from a guy who's should be starting, who's on the ascent, who's on the rise. I know they've had a bunch of injuries this year. I'm just saying, I know. I like CJ too. I appreciate everything CJ did. But sometimes it's just time to move on. With that being said, appreciate everybody. As always, this is HardFoul Radio, the show that values time and puts God first. I will see you guys tomorrow.